Hola ballers, my name is Preacher, and our new journey begins in FF2 after a brief rest stop on Pacific Drive and the ending of Final Fantasy 15. Make sure you check those out. FF2 is one of the 3 remaining games we have to play in the Final Fantasy franchise, along with 5 and 13. I want to get to 13. A lot of people saying you have to check it out after what happened in 15, so on that way, FF2. What was I expecting from this? Well, FF1 I surprisingly enjoyed. The pixel remasters, which we're going to play, clean up a lot of the problems. I did check out the GDQ run of Final Fantasy 1 and found out that a huge amount of spells and stuff just didn't work in the original game, which is cured in the pixel remaster. But Final Fantasy 3 also revealed they were still kind of getting the player to project themselves onto their characters. So what I really expected going into FF2 was kind of nameless characters and not a really intricate story based around their backstory, because they want you to be the character. That was a very 1980s thing. This came out in 1988, I believe, 1 year after Final Fantasy 1, so obviously they struck gold and wanted another one out as fast as possible. So I was expecting very, very similar mechanics to how Final Fantasy 1 works, but looking to expand on the universe. Add more things in. That's what sequels were like back in the early 90s. Is like, oh, one did well, let's do that, and then add more to it. Very similar to movie sequels now. So jumping into it, immediately presented with changing the names of the characters. Now, the characters did have predetermined names. I will never remember them. Whatever they are is what they are. I know it doesn't really matter, and I doubt many people who've even played this game can remember what the original characters' names were, but I decided to go with my dude, my guy, Zeppler, and Chadley in celebration of FF7 Rebirth just coming out, which will be our final game of our mainline game series. So getting into that, they actually did a better story than they did with FF1. It showed the Empire destroying cities and war is happening, and you are orphans looking for help. You are rescued by the Princess Hilda. One thing that is very apparent in FF2 is names became some sort of a problem. We're going to meet Gordon, Scott, Hilda, and so on and so forth, of these fantasy world names. The FF names have always kind of taken me for a ride with how just weird they are sometimes, like Cecil. It's like, Cecil? That's the macho hero of our tale, is Cecil. Nothing wrong with the name Cecil, it just doesn't invoke the kind of wartime hero that you would expect to see, but whatever it's going to be. Where you're rescued by Hilda, and she's like, yeah, you guys are just kids, you're orphan kids, it'd be safer if you just went and hid away, and off you go. Don't join the war, you're not fighters, you're a waste of time to us. And then very quickly, obviously, we proved we are fighters. Okay, FF2 is heavily disliked. I can't imagine playing this as a kid being anything less than majorly frustrating. The pixel remaster does a lot of work to try and remedy the horrors that is this game. And the first horror is the world map. Very much so. And what happens is you will fight appropriate level enemies, and surprisingly, unlike FF1, you're not getting decimated the second you get outside of the town. FF1 immediately had you grinding in order to be able to even do the first dungeon, unless you're like a speedrunner who knows the tactics or whatever. But for your first playthrough, you're going to want to grind a few levels out. FF1 doesn't do this. It has you go on a... Well, it does, but it disguises it better by having you go on a relatively long journey. The problem is, it tells you generally where you should go, but the world map is just free and open, which is unusual for Final Fantasy games. Usually, certainly the start of the game is very linearly locked off with mountainous regions and things like that, until you get the airship or something later on. Not so here. You can explore most of the map. What they don't tell you is that if you cross a certain pixel threshold, you will immediately jump to extremely high-level enemies and game over immediately. And that happened to me several times. I was like, oh, let's see what's over here. You're dead. Let's see what's going on over here. You would just go from, like, level 1 enemies to, like, level 30 immediately. And I was like, oh, okay. But the game is also trusting you to realize you shouldn't go there. And I was like, okay, I'm kind of okay with this. I'm just learning where my boundaries are. And I will say, later on in the game, when I had to traverse more of the map, I felt unnerved. I was like, I don't know what lurks here. Which is hard to do in these top-down, like, pixelated games of back in the day. Is I don't know what's in this jungle, and sometimes it was really bad, and you were just like, okay, I'm screwed, I'm dead, this is not going to happen. The main story involves the initial story of the game is set up much better than Final Fantasy 1, I think, which is you're the Warriors of Light, get your crystals, go and deal with the other crystals. Kind of usual Final Fantasy fare. In this one, you are actively becoming agents of the rebellion. There's code words. And I guess we should talk about another system that they tried, which never, as far as I know, reappears again in the Final Fantasy series. And again, it comes down to the really clear history that I've learned over playing these games is that they really always try something new with every Final Fantasy game. That's why they don't need to be played in some sort of chronological order. Every game is unique in some way. And this has two unique things that I found so far anyway. The first one is the active dialogue system. In that, talking to people will reveal keywords, and also finding specific items will give you a key item that you then specifically talk to them about. So it's based obviously on old point-and-click adventures, your Curse of Monkey Islands, your things like that, where you need a context-sensitive item or phrase in order to get the next part of the story to work. That also comes with the pitfalls of those games. So you will, as joining the rebellion, you will learn the phrase, I think it's Black Rose or something like that, which is the code word to tell people you're part of the rebellion. Then you will learn about other things like airships and the Dreadnought, which is the giant airship that the Empire is building. And then you will go to a character and they will give you their basic dialogue, and then you will have the questions ask. And ask, you can choose one of the keywords and get some information out of them relating to that, which will then usually progress the story in some way. That was an interesting start until later on, because one thing I found very strange in the first sort of 30-40 minutes is that there's a lot of public transport. And I was like, why is there so much public transport? Like, immediately the first town gives you a boat to travel to another town. You can walk to the town, but you can take a boat. And then once you arrive at the town with the boat, you meet Cid. This is the first real incarnation of Cid. Cid is in the FF1 Pixel Remasters, but that's retconned in after the fact. In the original FF1, he wasn't there. But now we meet the real Cid, who's in charge of airships, the original Cid. And Cid will airship you to any town that you've visited. He will or that you need to go to for the story. He will simply, if you pay him enough gil, he'll just take you there in an airship. And I was like, this is very strange. I've visited 2 towns or 3 towns, and now I have a boat and I have the airship access. Very odd. That is because this game, similar to those old Monkey Island point-and-click adventures, requires you to travel backwards and forwards a lot. A hell of a lot. Because you will learn a phrase in one town, like the snowy town to the north, where you'll meet a character and he'll tell you about something, and you might probably go and ask Princess Hilda about it, or the king who's dying in his bed, and you'll have to keep traversing backwards and forwards, and then you have a choice. You can either use the overworld, or you can use all the public transport systems, which gets very expensive, at least early game, to travel backwards and forwards with. So, made sense, but it did lead to the point, it's like, I'm missing a piece of dialogue from somebody. It took me, I got stuck for about 30 minutes, knowing exactly, and this is the frustration, you know exactly what you need to do, but you need to unlock the dialogue choice to make it happen. And this dialogue choice was, I had been given access to a city, which was a royal city, and I had met the prince, Prince Gordon, who is a coward. I had met his brother Scott, who had died, and given me his royal crest, his ring, and Gordon's gone missing, and I need to access his city, and his city is protected by a fire that is locking all the doors. I need to extinguish the fire or do something, right? That I know what my next step is. At this point also, which was really weird, is I named Chadley, our 4th player, at the start of the game. I've yet to meet Chadley even now. They constantly cycle in a new 4th party member. So I started with Minwoo, who's the advisor to the princess, who is extremely overpowered white mage. Again, I think this is to remedy how hard FF1 was at the start. They give you a really overpowered white mage to just heal you to death. And then I got 2 other characters after that who were aiding me in the story. I have yet to meet Chadley, who is the brother of my other party member, Zeppler, or Dippler as we call her, because she dips on lots of things. And so, I was trying to find the solution to the story. And it turned out that what I needed to do, after I visited the whole world, is that I had a context-sensitive question to specifically ask Cid. And if I didn't ask that one, even though I'd asked a bunch of them, because they made logical sense, then the story just didn't progress. So I was backwards and forwards all the time. I was like, right, we're going to have to go old school here, like we were doing point-and-clicks, and just go to everybody and ask everything again to see if something happens. And eventually I asked Cid the right question, and Cid's like, oh, okay, I do know about that thing. And you're like, God damn it, man. I've been here like multiple times. I could tell you all these stories. And again, these context-sensitive questions don't allow real back and forth. You need to do it. It's like Contradiction, the game we played a little while ago. It's like you need the exact right question or nothing's going to happen. But without any hints. So, and then some people tell me, it's like, dude, I originally played this in the Japanese version. It was just impossible. I was just constantly clicking everything, hoping something would happen until eventually it did. So eventually I managed to solve it, but it involved a character, again, that I'd already been to several times. And getting a snowmobile and traveling to an area in a snowy mine in order to access the Goddess Bell to go to Elgit's torch in order to get the fire to turn the fire off. A lot of that going on. But our ultimate goal is to destroy the Dreadnought. We have a really cool cutscene, and honestly, I'm always impressed by these pixel games. People don't give them enough credit for how well they convey the story via the limited resources they have of this 2D, you know, isometric style view of the overworld and telling you that disasters have happened, and then they change the artwork in the towns, because the towns are beautiful. They're painted wonderfully. Is that we try and stop the Dreadnought, and when we're too late, General Berger has put a stop to this, as well as the mysterious Dark Knight, who's got Golbez vibes, and the Dreadnought takes off and attacks and bombs all of the cities. And then when you revisit those cities, everybody's dead. It's quite dark and horrid. This has gone on, and they convey it really well in the simple style of having it done. So the Dreadnought's loose, and our job is to destroy the Dreadnought. Pretty fine. This is where things took an ugly turn for us. I'm going to get to the progression system in a second, don't worry. I finally got access to the Royal City and met Gordon again. It's really long. It's really long, and then I got stuck in there, and we play by certain rules, my friends. No save scumming. We play out every fight, and we do not flee. And we have done that for every single Final Fantasy game. The only ones that are sort of middle ground, grey areas, was like Final Fantasy 15 constantly spawns enemies on top of you while you're fighting that are massively unnecessary. And you can just walk away from them. And often if you're traveling from an area, you'll just randomly encounter things from miles and miles away. It's like, ooh, you're in combat now. So for that, we technically, I guess, did flee. But either way, every other game, we've never fleed. I ended up at the top of this tower, which I think I was on the 5th or 6th floor of this tower. No heals left, no mana left, 3 of my party dead, and no possible way of defeating the last boss. I made it to the last boss, but no possible way. And it ended up in this situation where, similar to Baldur's Gate 3, if you followed that playthrough, the rules I impose on myself are to make the game more interesting. It's as simple as that. It makes our journey more interesting that we run into these. Because if you just save scum out, it's like, oh, okay, we kind of goofed this up, we've got to save scum it. Then it's just less interesting. It's less good for viewers' perspective. It's less intense for me as a game, because everything will come across really easily. I know what to expect, blah, blah, blah. It just kind of waters down the experience rather than imposing some simple rules that aid and create moments like this. Then proceeded 45 minutes of trying to get out of this. I needed to get back to a village. I needed to res my team. I needed to restock. And I needed to refresh my mana. It was so hard. It was so hard because I had to flee. I had to make the choice. I really wrestled with this for a few minutes. And people were like, you're going to have to do it. You're going to have to do it. I was like, I have to flee. But that's part of the journey. I had to flee 5 floors of this tower. 5 floors with no heals left. No potions left. Nothing left. I had to get out. And it was so hard. And what made it worse, certainly for our regular viewers, is it was rats that kept finishing me off. The goddamn rats kept poisoning me, which the actual hit would do like 2 damage, but the poison would tick for 42 and kill me. I would nearly get to the ladder and just get wiped out. It was horrendous. It was horrendous. Much to the joy of the viewers. The whole sequence, I would watch it because I was smashing my desk by the end of it. I was so angry. The solution came in the form of ideas being thrown by people who don't follow the game. So if you're not sure what our stream rules are, don't backseat if you know the answer. That's not fun. We're not doing a walkthrough here. We're not doing the game facts playthrough. But if you've never seen the game before, throwing ideas out is a good streaming environment. It's actually my favorite, is where we're all tossing ideas at a problem. So we came up with the idea of putting in the back row, which I'm not sure did anything, equipping dual shields in either arm. So my guy just had 2 shields, and I was like, right, hope and pray. Even this wasn't enough. Now, it did block and got us further, but it wasn't enough. Occasionally, an attack would sneak through, and by the end of it, I think I had 6 HP by the final floor to get out of this place. 6 HP, and then I had to get across the open world where we had to, like, do a little bit, save, go forwards, because I literally got within sight of the town. Like, I could see it on my screen and got killed outside the front door. And I was like, God damn, it was horrendous. But what a load of fun. Absolutely tons of fun to get there. Why did I end up in this situation? the progression system was very confusing for the first only 10 minutes or so. The only reason I noticed something was odd because I took for granted that my characters were just leveling up. It plays the sound effect, a little level up screen appears, but as I've done so many of the old school pixel style games, I've done everything from 1 till 6 at this point, besides 5. It's not unusual, so I wasn't paying too much attention to it. My characters were just leveling up. That's not how it works in FF2, and the Pepe laughs, and I'm sure many of you here are going, was interesting. One thing I noticed is that Zeppler had remarkably less health than the rest of my party. Not only that, we had a great hero moment at the very beginning of the game where my party got I accidentally stumbled into an area on the world map I shouldn't have been into, but interestingly enough, although it killed my dude and Zeppler, my guy survived and fought on. And we play out every fight. I will try everything to win a fight. If we game over, we game over, but I'm not going to leave resources on the table to just get away or just flee, of course, by this point. So he won. But he fought on his own for a long time. And then he had to fight on his own back to town to res everybody. And he did that. He fought back solo and got the team back to the town to resurrect everybody. And we didn't game over. It was a great monumental occasion. A few minutes later, I noticed he has 4 times or 5 times more HP than Zeppler, and he has triple the HP of my dude. And I'm like, that seems a bit absurd. Maybe he just got a ton of XP from finishing that very high-level fight earlier on. It is what it is. But then the difference became more and more staggering. The way Final Fantasy II's progression system works is similar to World of Warcraft Classic. Every weapon requires its own individual skill level ups. So, if you are, for example, even though this doesn't apply in FF2 and you'll understand why shortly, level 30, but you've never used a sword, you will have no skill with a sword, and you need to do a number of encounters to level up using swords. This is their twist on the job system, which was predetermined in FF1, which they clearly wanted to change. And also reflects in 14, where you can do whatever you want. Like, the joy of this is you can do whatever the hell you want to do. Every character can do everything. It's fine. You could be any sort of job in the world. You can customize them and flexibilize them. So you see where they come. They're very flexible. You can be whatever you want to be. However, it does mean that all increases in stats are context sensitive. What do I mean? If the fight goes multiple turns, then your stamina will level up. If your character is the one that does the most offense, let's say with a sword, then you will level up strength and you will level up swords. If your character wipes out on the first turn, the one enemy that spawns, nobody else will get anything at all. If your character takes damage, then you will level up your HP. If via pure RNG, which is what's happened to me, let's say Zeppler rarely gets attacked because the enemies, as far as I can tell, just randomly choose who to attack to, then they just have no health. And the other characters that are getting the brunt of the attacks will have loads of health. Which then means when you hit a boss that does sort of AoE, one of your characters just could die. It's so odd, because you can also cheese the hell out of this system, and it's very apparent, is that you can set somebody up to be attacked by the party while being healed, and with a shield on to reduce damage taken or whatever. You can make them very solid and tanky with your externals, and then you can have the whole party just attack that person over and over again, and they will get masses of HP from doing it. It's so ripe for abuse that I'm very confused as to why they went with this system instead of balancing HP and stuff based on experience. That would make more sense. The weapon skill thing, okay, I can kind of get that. You can level the weapons very quickly later on by fighting longer fights. You can set characters up to level skills in a fight that they can't really get hurt by because you still have a ton of HP. Changing weapon doesn't like reduce your other stats, so you can be very overpowered and using low-level weapons and level them up very quickly. You can do all that. This is all ripe for grinding abuse. Obviously, I'm not going to do that, but what became apparent is that there were tons of basically physically immune enemies that will only take physical damage on critical strike. And the way I usually set my parties up is I have a barbarian, which is my main character. I usually have a thief of some kind, because it's handy to have mug and steel is always very handy. And then I usually have like a black mage and a white mage, or a ranger and a mix as some sort of red mage. And so my plan was, from the very start, is like, I'll be the barbarian. I will put Zeppla as a... she starts off as a ranger, but also it mentions you can have somebody who's just bare fist, so that sounded really fun. But I made her the thief. No relation to the real Zeppla. And I was like, right, my dude can be our ranger for now. And then we'll get Chadley as our caster later on. And I still don't have Chadley, so I was banking all my spells that I'd found. Because they find them in tomes, and what you do is you teach them to the individual characters, and then they can all level them up. And I kept running into these physical immune mobs. I was like, right, I'm going to have to change strategy here to adapt to the game, which is fine. And I taught everybody magic. And from then on, it really became pointless to use anything other than magic, essentially. Because mana lasts a really long time, certainly for the start of the game. And for whatever reason, they've made ether very expensive. So my game plan was, I will use magic until their mana is low, in case I need to fight some physical immune enemies later on, and level up the spells, because you have to level up the spells as well. It's similar to fire is similar to a sword. You need to get fire leveled up, and it will go fire 1, 2, 3, and 4, and use more mana accordingly. So I wanted fire, thunder, and blizzard covered, so we had the elements covered on each character, and just leveled them up. I did this leading to that tower. I did not expect a 6-floor plus tower, and I had no mana. And I started running into Flans and Adamantoises that take no damage from physical, and the Adamantoises in particular hit really goddamn hard. And I ended up learning that you can use the spell books in your inventory to do a massive cast. So if you can teach a character life or cure, but if you use the book as an item, it will do like cure 7 and heal the whole party. So I used all that resource to try and just get to the last boss and finish it off, which is how I ended up out of everything. I was so drained. How this progression system is going to work out long term, I don't know. But I'm definitely fearful right now that we'll just end up with really radically skewed characters that by the end game is going to be a problem. Like right now, Zeppla is so far behind on HP, it's weird. But she might go through a streak of being the one that gets attacked a lot, and that'll balance itself out. It seems like it's just a roll of the dice. But for now, I don't know where this progression system takes us. So stay tuned for that, and I'll be back tomorrow with a lot more. So be good, guys, and I'll see you again. Bye-bye.